Good day. We're learning the Hechaltzu, the Maimer of the Rebbe Rashab, 1898, famous Maimer, all about Avos Yisrael. And we're middle of chapter 15, where the Rashab is talking about kina, envy, jealousy. In chapter 14, he told us how that's such a bad midah, and it leads to hatred, etc. Here in 15, he says that although there is a good detail to jealousy, but nevertheless, in our situation, which we're going to learn today about, it's not good. But he spent the first half of chapter 15 explaining a basic concept that we've heard and know about. Kinas sofrim tar b'chochma. The jealousy amongst the scribes, the scholars, the Talmidei Chachamim adds chochma, wisdom of Hashem. And this is something that is encouraged in the Jewish world, in the Torah world. The Rashab says, yes, very good, because that's genuine. You're not jealous of the person. You're jealous of the act that the person does that leads him to be whatever he is. So that's good. Competition to grow in Yiddishkeit. But when you're jealous of the person, that's a problem. And in this vein, he continues today talking about, we're on page 124, Moshe. He continues talking about the breakdown that comes from the jealousy of the person, even if you, the one who's jealous, is an Oved Hashem. And again, the reason he's going to speak about this is because this Maimer Hechaltzu was addressed to Hasidim in a shtibel, in a Chabad shtibel. And the Hasidim were serious Hasidim. These weren't people who were interested in, just gashmias, material matter, more affluence. These were Chassidim that were davening and learning. And nevertheless, they displayed elements of jealousy and hatred and sinas chinam, baseless hate, and all of that. So the Rashab now has to tackle the individual who is an Oved Hashem. So now we're moving over now. That's why I wanted to repeat the last few lines. We're moving over now to his analysis of the Oved Hashem. So now, Moshe, what we're doing is the Rashab is going to look at the goody-goody. The A student in your class who was always, whatever the teacher said, yes, yes, yes. So here you would think such a person is perfect, is complete. The Rashab says, well, if it leads to fighting in shul and hating people that are in shul because of whatever your excuse is, there's something wrong with your avodas Hashem. Let's go to the text. The kol zer hu k'sheyech b'eitzes hatoiv avol kasher be'emes ein chofetz liyas b'mailas haprishus vatara kadoime. If truthfully speaking, you don't want to be from those that are pious and those that are pure. Rak shemikane b'chaveiroi loma huaymed b'mailas madregazu. You yourself are not looking to be very holy, okay? But you can't stand the fact that the other person is displaying that level of holiness. Because deep down in yourself, Chaim Zev, look, I know who I am, I know where I'm at, and I'm not ready for this higher, greater, pious, pure level. But when I see my fellow in shul who's acting that way, that bothers me. Why does it bother me? Because I feel that he's not really at that level. Let's continue inside. Because he acts this way, his friend, he hates him. Says the Rashab, Zel Dover Kosho Vigarua Ma'id Ma'id. Very harsh words. This is a very harsh and bad thing. Ma'id Ma'id. Very, very much so. This is kind of disgusting. It's disgusting that you can't tolerate someone else who's davening and learning with such a geschmack and such yirah shamayim, and it eats you up. Says the Rashab, if it eats you up, it shows there's something very, very wrong with your own service of God. Moshe is smiling. I see such a smile.
I'm just smiling because I'm thinking of one particular person.
Oy.
Sometimes in shul, and it's just you're standing there in shul, you're trying to daven, and it's this young guy, and he's doing he's doing this, doing the same thing he's been doing for the last 10 years, and you're just like, I think I said this before. Uri Kaplan said this once. He said that in yeshiva, maybe it was in I don't know where it was. It was a Chabad yeshiva. Some guy came in, he was doing that, and somebody took a wet mikveh towel and threw it on his head in the middle of the guy's Anyway, enough said. That's
right. But so the Rashab is saying that you and I, when we look at such a person, that's what he's saying. If the person is legit, okay, he doesn't say that, but if the person is legit, then it's our problem. Then it shows something wrong with us. If he's a faker and not legit, and he's just doing it to show off, and everyone should look at him, then he deserves to get a wet towel thrown at him. Okay? Now, the question then becomes, Menashe, who is in a position to say about someone else they're legit or not legit? But that's a different story. I told you that story with the Chassid Zalman Moshe. He was invited Yutas Kislev to Fabring in Kiev many years ago. And he was this, Chassid who was completely, into Chassidus, into davening. He was a shoichet. And he hated chitzonius, external type of showing of your religiosity, like you described, Moshe. So the Rav, they were davening Ma'ariv, right, before the Fabrengen, Yutas Kislev night. And the Rav, it was a Litvisher Rav, I guess, but the shul had a lot of Chassidim, Lubavitcher Chassidim. So they stand Shmoneh Esrei, and the Rav is doing, seems like what you just described, shuckling all over him, and all that. And all of a sudden, boom, a herring hits his nose, a wet herring. The Rav just wipes it away, continues, and after Shmoneh Esrei, after davening, he goes over and he says, do you happen to know how I got a herring thrown at my... So they point to the guest that came to Fabring, Yutas Kislev. They point, he threw it at you. So he goes over, the Rav goes over to the Chassid of Zalman Moshe and says, with this fear, I'm very sorry, I upset you. Please forgive me for upsetting you. Taking the blame. And Rabbi Zalman Moshe looks him in the eye and he says, you ought to be sorry. Tonight's Yutas Kislev. Tonight's about Chassidus. Anyone that displays their religiosity deserves to be thrown a wet herring into their face. Now, it's a very, very... I wrote up the story in one of my books, and the son of a big Litvisher Rosh Hashiva, who was a real special Jew, who's been reading some of my books from Lakewood. He lives in Lakewood. He called me up. He calls me up once in a while, and he says, this story threw me for a loop. It's like, Torah, cover that Torah. And I had to explain to him that this chassid didn't do this every time. But it was Yutes Kislev night. The energy is for this chassid was Chassidim. He didn't know he's coming to a place where has a litiv sherav. He did, and all of a sudden, in front of his face, oh yeah, and he added, Moshe, he added, and if you want to daven that way, because that's your style of davening, go to a corner or go to the other side. Why must you daven in front of my face that way? It's like, why must I see it, Yutes Kislev? And I told this the rabbi, the Lakewood Rav, a rabbi who called me about this, who, we have a dialogue, and I said, I'm not saying that he's right. Even though I wrote the story, I'm not saying he's right. I'm not saying that, that he is a tzaddik and it's pure. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got to look at the whole avira, the environment. It's Yutes Kislev. It's in a litva sherav of a Chabad shtibul. You have to put it, and you have to know who did it. I said to him, if you knew more about this chassid, you wouldn't question me because he was so genuine. Did he have a wild side to him? Absolutely. He was like Reb Mendel Futterfass's mashpia in Neville. He was a sheichet in Neville. Neville was sharp chassidim. And he wasn't a mashpia in the Chabad yeshiva. He was a mashpia in the community, in Neville. But Reb Mendel gravitated to him because Reb Mendel also has that, fiery, passionate, wild side to him. So he really related and identified with his connection. He was a big makusher to the Rebbe Rashab. There's a lot of stories about that. Anyway, going back here. In other words, Moshe, what I want to say is that what Uri Kaplun told you, what I'm telling you, it's not for any chassid to throw herrings or wet towels. I want on the record that I said this, and if you're it could be the guy who threw the wet towel that you're talking about was a nobody. You know what I'm saying? And he did it just because he just is angry. Or he just wants to make a show. It could be that too. The story that I'm sharing, knowing a little bit from what I heard from Mendel and others about this chassid, he seems to be more legit. But even that, I'm going to make a disclaimer. I wasn't there, and I don't know, you're not there, but it sounds like it. But even so, even if it is, before a person decides that he is the one to legitimately, poo-poo a litvak who's davening that way and showing off, think twice. So going back to this text over here, the Rebbe is saying that if the person is davening with sincerity and you can't tolerate that you're not doing that and he is, and therefore you can't stand it, it shows that you have something really wrong inside. There's something really wrong with your midas. There's a midah of kina that is devastating, resonating in your heart, and therefore know it and get rid of it. Let's continue. Hashem, and therefore he hates those specifically who serve God. So what does he do, this fellow? Look what interesting, Moshe Myers, what he does. He attaches himself to the simple people. Now, look what the Rashab is saying, a lot of psychology here. He says like this, these guys that are the holier than thou, right? They're bluffers. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to connect with the simple people in shul. Because they're not threatening to me. You hear that? They're not threatening to me. This is deep psychology, Chevra, because it's so true. There are people that are threatened by people who are outstanding. So to them, they display jealousy and hatred. And the way they compensate for their attitude is they start hanging around with simple people. And they say, the simple person who can barely read and all that, and doesn't know much and all that, he's the real McCoy. So the Rashab is going to say that that's all a ploy. That he really doesn't care for them either. His hatred is so much towards the Oved Hashem and the learned one that he compensates it and justifies it by saying, but I really love the others. But the truth is, you're a faker. You're a bluffer. You don't love the simple people either. You need to have companionship and therefore an acceptance. So you want someone to come to your funeral. Because the guy that you hate ain't going to come to your funeral or your bar mitzvah for your kid or your wedding for your son. But the simple person who doesn't know any better will come. But from your perspective, you're not genuine. That's what he's saying over here. Let's continue inside. And the person can fool himself and can fool he can convince himself, Menashe, you know why I like the simple people? Because I'm a humble guy. I'm also humble. So, you come to a shul and there's knockers, there's machers, right? Big shots. I'm not going to identify. And some of them are very frum and very learned and but I'm not going to identify with them because they're fakers. But I'm humble. So therefore, I want to hang around humble people. So I'm going to speak to the people and join the people that are humble. Says the Rebbe, and this is a fake on your part. That's why you love simple people. But in truth, it's coming, this is the reverse psychology. This is coming from your ultimate ego. It's all an ego trip. It's all about you. Your acceptance, you feeling good, you wanting to be recognized, and at the end of the day, you want people at your wedding, at your bar mitzvah, kids, bar mitzvahs, and ultimately at your funeral, right? So you'll do everything to make that happen. Now you can't get it with the machers and knockers because you hate them because they're in your opinion they're bluffers. So therefore you're jealous of what they know and what they have. So you ride them off. Who do you go to? You go to the simple fellow. The simple fellow. But you're not genuine. You don't really like the simple person because he's simple and sincere. You like him because he meets a need of yours, a very important need. So again, it's all about you. That's the meaning that the Rebbe says the words, it's because of your yeshus, your ego. Since since he prides himself on being among the Oivdim who serve Hashem. In other words, you consider yourself, I am a very religious person. I'm an Oived Hashem. So I identify with the small people, with the humble people. The ones that are ostentatious, I don't want to have anything to do with them. But the small people, yeah, and you should know this is not something that's common, but if you pay attention, you'll see this as well. I've come across it. Sometimes in myself and sometimes others, but there is that sensation where we convince ourselves that we are the humble ones. We are the Oivdei Hashem. And therefore we look for people who are similar. But if you're looking for people who are similar to support you, that's Yeshus. That's Yeshus. If you genuinely care about them and whether it meets your standard or not, I'll give you an example that we've also spoken about many times in our classes. You invite people Shabbos to your table. Orchim. This is the week, Parshas Vayera. Hachnosas Orchim. This is the week of Hachnosas Orchim. Who do you invite to your table? Most times, we invite people that we and our family are comfortable with. We don't invite people that we and our family are not comfortable with. That's That's my experience. I know your experience, that's my experience. So ultimately, that's not the ultimate mitzvah Hachnosas Orchim. I'm not talking about people who are dangerous, and we have to be concerned about that today. Or people who are coming, you have boys, and it's a woman or a man, and they have their mind on the girl or the boy. I've had that at my table, I want to tell you. I'm talking from experience, okay? Baruch Hashem, nothing has been done, but after Shabbos, I get the email or the WhatsApp or the call. Would it be all right to meet your daughter? And my wife tells over a story. You mentioned Uri Kaplan from his stomping grounds in Melbourne, Australia, where my wife's family, they had an open home, anyone, and it was known throughout the community. And they had some very, very difficult people on many levels, from smell to legitimacy, okay? And there was no such a thing that the door was closed. But one time, someone came, and he was a friend of one of her brothers. And ultimately, there was a girl there also who was a guest. He married her, he went after her. There was 25-year difference in their age. You're talking about in the 1970s. It wasn't usual in the 70s to marry someone 25 years younger. But he had I'm just saying, and I think it ended in a divorce. So what triggered this is because he says here, Hachnosas Orchim, right? But the truth is, the mitzvah Hachnosas Orchim is anyone. How are you going to deal with it? Okay, so that's the exception to the rule. If it's going to hurt another person, then you might be it's legitimate not to invite them, right? But even if it's not that, we get comfortable and we invite people that support us. So that type of Hachnosas Orchim is about me. And it's not 100% Hachnosas Orchim. It's Hachnosas Orchim. I'm going to get a mitzvah, but there's a higher level. I told you in Los Angeles, Chaim Zev, I remember Rav, he passed on already. He had an open house, and all the people that were strange and difficult in LA, in the community, were Shabbos afternoon at his table. That to me it's real genuine. It's a very hard thing to do. Let's continue. Therefore, this person who is a servant of God, his hatred is focused entirely to those who have some level or rung of godliness. For this challenges his yeshes. Because he also desires to advance in Avodah, but feels threatened because he has had sufficiently developed himself. He has not developed himself. But why does he gravitate to simple people who are not in a certain rung, at a certain status, so they don't threaten him, therefore he loves them. Because one should love his fellow Jew. Now the Rebbe speaks about someone who is even more coarse and has more yeshus. It could be that his love to the simple people who mispashet yeshusay. Okay, so really what I told you about before, I would put into this category now, that he says now, his ego will become bigger through the simple people. Oh, they say, you see the simple person, you see, look how he gives us respect. In other words, this fellow who is an Oved Hashem, giving respect to the simple people, so they'll say, wow, you recognize us. No one in shul recognizes us. And you're recognizing us. So therefore they They shower him with respect. That builds his ego. And therefore they accept and they make precious his words. So the Rebbe says this is all a ploy of his Yeshus. So it's very interesting as we learn this, how he goes deep into the psychology of human condition, of looking at another person or dealing with another person, where it could be, you hear this, Moshe, could be that all of his kindness and his chesed, it's all about him. And therefore, he cleverly chooses who to hang out with, because he knows they will reciprocate and give him the honor and pleasure and say, oh, wow, you're a real Eved Hashem. You like us so much. You're the only one here that recognizes us. And it's completely because of his Yeshus. Kitzur. Milas Hakina Dedusha. In the first part of this chapter, we spoke about the virtue of jealousy from a holy perspective, that is competition of learning and doing more mitzvahs, all that. Then we speak about Yeshus Goyremes Sina Libar Maila. Yeshus, ego, causes hatred to someone, hatred to those who are truly quality people. V'yochalias, bi'ava lanoshim pshutim, and it could be that his hatred towards those that are special, very special in their service of Hashem, will be substituted by his love for the simple people, but it's really all about himself. And finally he says that Rebbe explains the reason for these things. So Chavra, we will continue in Mitzvah Shem, the Mimer, on Monday, Mitzvah Shem.
Can I?
Yes.
I just want to say I'm going to America on Sunday, so I won't be with you guys for about a month. So Mitzvah Shem, I will be back in a month.
Wait, thank you. First of all, have a safe trip. Second of all, you could learn with us in the morning from Baltimore.
Yeah, but davening starts at 8 o'clock.
Oh, you can't go to another minyan?
That's the shul, the Rabbi Gardi shul I go to. It starts at 8 o'clock. So
Whatever. I'm just joking.
And
Whatever.
I want to thank Moshe for calling me a young man. Thank you very much.
Anyway, you should only go for simchas, because you're going ultimately for your son's wedding, and it should only be simchas, and we're all with you, and only good things, only brachas, and Hashem should continue blessing you and your wife and children and family, only with good zachen. Sei gesund to everyone. Have a great Shabbos. See everyone on Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.